So this week we're going to focus on technical SEO. This is week 3 of our training. And just a quick recap. So week 1 was kind of a brief introduction to SEO. Some of the topics that we are going to cover today, we kind of touched briefly during week 1. Last week, as you all know, we focused on-page optimization. So really what all you can do on your website to optimize it for SEO, from the meta tags to the content and so forth. And this week, we're really going to dive deep with technical SEO. So really the key things we're going to go over today: what is technical SEO, why is it important, and some areas that you should consider when reviewing your own websites or a client's website for technical SEO. And then of course at the end, Q&A, and then number 5, we're going to get into the homework. So I know we have a dedicated section for Q&A, but feel free to chime in anytime you have a question. Just want to make sure everyone understands these concepts. So what is technical SEO? So technical SEO in a nutshell is any optimizations you do to your website to help search engine crawlers crawl it and index it more effectively. So a more simple definition is any optimization done aside from the content and on-page work we discussed last week. And so you'll see, if I could explain it another way, last week we focused on everything on the front end of the website. So everything you can actually see if you went to a website. This week we're going to look at more of the back end. So some of the things that you should be aware of in the code and just the overall running of the website. That's really what we're going to dive into this week. Now, for technical SEO, the 3 key areas you want to focus on are performance, crawlability, and indexation. So performance, just as it sounds, is your website running like a old 1950s car, or is it running like a smooth sports car? And of course, you want it to run closer to the smooth sports car as much as possible. Crawlability simply means the ability for Google and other search engines to crawl and review the website. And indexation is basically the process of getting your pages on your website included in Google and the other search engines. Any questions there? Okay. I'm sorry?
He was asking about indexation.
Indexation. Yeah, so indexation, so let's say, for example, Jarek, from last week, you have your photography website. So let's say you added a few new pages last week to your website. So just because you added them on your website doesn't mean that they're going to show up here in a Google search result. So let's just do a quick search result here. So just because you added those pages to your WordPress website doesn't mean they're going to show up here or going to be listed here. It's not, that's not an automatic process. So basically, when your website is indexed, so when Google, the other search engines review your website and try to figure out where it should be ranked, that's when it's indexed and added to these listings here. Does that answer your question? Okay, great. Any other questions on that before we move on? Okay. And so just so you see how it fits in with the other core components of SEO. So any effective SEO campaign is going to consist of these 3 components. You're going to have your on-page SEO, which we went over last week. You're going to have your off-page SEO, which we'll go over later on in the course. And then you have your technical SEO. So all 3 of these different areas need to be addressed if you want to have a really good SEO campaign. You might be wondering, why is it important? Why is it important that you optimize your website for performance, why you optimize it for crawlability, and why you optimize it for indexation? So over the years, search engines like Google, they've become better at crawling your website, figuring out what your website is about, whether Jarek has a photography website, Joy has a website about singing, or Dia has a website about K-pop. It's very important. Yeah, so Google over the years, the search engines become much better and more effective at crawling your website and understanding the information on these websites. But they're not perfect. They do make errors. So it's very important that you make sure you address the different areas we're going to go over to ensure that those errors aren't being made for your website. So these are the different areas we're going to cover today. So as you can see, I've broken it down into two areas. The first is site crawlability and website indexation. So that really consists of managing broken links, managing your sitemaps for your website, and managing the Robots.txt file for your website. So don't worry about what these mean now. Well, we're going to go over each of these in detail. And then the second part of this session, we're going to talk about website performance. So this includes things like your site security, your site mobility. So in other words, is your site easy to use on mobile devices like an iPhone or Android, and your website page speed. So I've broken these down like this for two reasons. First, to kind of help you connect, the different areas to where they help as far as technical SEO, but also for anything included in the site crawlability and website indexation part. I think these are things that with everyone's experience with SEO and your experience with WordPress, I would be confident in you all handling these things. But for things related to performance, then I would highly recommend that you partner up with a developer, because if you're not if you don't fix something the correct way, it can break your website. So very important that I wanted to make that distinction here. So site crawlability and website indexation. So this is a review question, and I'm going to pick on Jana first today. So Jana, what is a search engine crawler? Let's let Jana try to figure it out. If she needs help, I'll open it up to the rest of the team. Hey, hold on 1 minute. I'm having some trouble hearing you. Let me raise my volume. Okay, that's good. Okay. So let's go back.
Spider.
Yep. So your answer is spider? Yeah, so that's one thing that's one term that are used to describe search engine crawlers. Anyone else want to help her out?
Keywords.
No, not keywords.
What is a search engine crawler? Search engine crawler.
So whoever said Google, that's partly right. So Google is a search engine crawler. Uh, yeah, Jarek. Yeah, okay. But
Websites.
yeah, so Google is a search engine crawler, but kind of a more general answer to this. A search engine crawler can be Google, it can be Bing, it can be Yahoo. Pretty much, it's any mechanism that crawls your website, reviews your website and try to figure out how to place it in the Google search results. So that's kind of the more general answer I was looking for. But yeah, Google is a search engine crawler. So rule number one for SEO, and really I would say rule number one for having a website, you need to make sure your website is indexed. So Jarek, again, what do I mean by when I say your website is indexed?
You have to put a
Make sure your website.
you have to put a like tag.
Not quite. We just went over it like a few minutes ago.
Make sure your website is indexed.
Yeah. And so when it's indexed, that means that you can find it on where?
On web search result.
Yeah, exactly. Good job. So yeah, so the number one rule of having a website and SEO is making sure that your website is able to be discovered on Google, on Bing, or Yahoo. And really the reason why you have a website probably is that you want people to find it. You want people to read your articles. You want people to look at your pictures, look at your videos, and so forth. So that's why it's very important that your website is indexed. So the first step in doing that is making it as easy as possible for Google and other search engines to crawl your website. So how do you do that? So there are three areas that we're going to focus on for today's session, but they are fixing broken links. So pretty much if a link is broken on your website, you need to be able to not only detect it, but fix it. And you want to ensure you follow best practices for your website sitemap and Robots.txt File. So again, this one is going to be for Jonah. Jonah, what does it mean when a website is indexed?
Site searchable yun. Ano lang, sir? Ang site niyo search mo sa mga search mo. Will appear. Will appear. Will appear on the search results.
Yep. Yep. Good job. So what are broken links and why is it important to fix them? So a broken link is simply a hyperlink that doesn't work. So this is a link I made up for Jarek's photography website. And so let's see what happens when I click on it. Actually, let's see. Uh-oh. So when I click on this link here, and sorry guys, my PowerPoint isn't responding, it hasn't woken up yet. So So you can see here, when I try to click that link, it doesn't do anything because Jarek doesn't have a live photography website, or in either case, it's not the same URL. So we go back, let's see here. What's going on? And PowerPoint actually gives me a error that it cannot download the information requested because the information doesn't exist. So basically, whenever you see something like that on a website, and usually it's going to be when a link leads you to a 404 page. So you might have seen, has anyone seen that before? Like a 404 page?
Yes.
Yeah. So basically what that means is that website link is broken and that website owner hasn't fixed it or updated it to the correct page. So this is bad because it creates a bad user experience. So let's say you're reading about something that you're really interested about, and then you click a link and you want more information, and for whatever reason, that link doesn't go anywhere, and you're not able to get the information that you need. So that creates a bad user experience. You're kind of a little frustrated with the website. And if this occurs enough on your website where there are broken links, then it can hurt your website's ranking. And this is another reason it restricts the flow of link equity. Link equity, that's a topic that we'll get into starting next week. But basically, it means that when Google indexes your website or you get a backlink to your website, with broken links, that link equity or link value or link power, link authority, whatever you want to call it, is not able to flow through your website efficiently. So you can think about a link as kind of a road through your website. So each link on your website, whether it's internal, whether it's external, is like a road on your website. And when there's a broken link, you can think of it as a road that's under repair or it's not usable. So obviously you have to go another route, which isn't always the most time-effective option. So everyone with me there? Is that everyone understand that part?
Yes.
Okay.
Question, Jerry.
I have
Sure.
a question. What is hyperlink for when there is already a link?
Can you repeat that one more time?
About the hyperlink,
Mm-hmm.
what's the hyperlink for when there's already a link?
So the hyperlink is actually, and I'll show everyone. Stop that. Let's see. Let's go ahead and restart PowerPoint because it's not working right now. Jerry, to answer your question, a hyperlink is basically, I'll show you how to create one. So it's basically the actual link to whatever page you want it to go to. So let's go back to that slide and you can actually see what that looks like in the background. Okay. So the way you edit the hyperlink, so usually it's going to be a little different in WordPress, but you're going to go to edit link. Then you're actually going to put whatever the URL is for that website. So let's say, we wanted to link out to YouTube. So instead of whatever we have here, we're going to put youtube.com. Okay. So now the hyperlink should work because YouTube is an actual website, a live website. So when we click on that site, when we click on this link now, it's going to take us to YouTube. So the hyperlink is whatever website you're going to point that link to. Does that answer your question, Jarek?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I think he is confused about if, like, for example, if you're on a spreadsheet or if you're on a spreadsheet and you put something like www.youtube.com,
Mhm.
he is asking if why it would not work. Why would that phrase not work if it's already a link?
Okay. So we're actually going to look at that right now.
That is because you did not insert a hyperlink into that word. Am I right?
Correct. That's partially correct. So you're saying, so we have Excel open right now. If you had www.youtube.com, That?
Yes.
So you're saying your question is why doesn't it always turn into that blue underline?
Sometimes when you click on it, it will not open a new website
Okay.
because it will it be automatically hyperlinked if you click on a website format.
Yeah, and the way you would know that, this is pretty much universal across any application or any website. Remember when we first created it? I'll create it again. See how it's underlined in blue?
Yes.
So that's how you know it's an active hyperlink. So if you click on it, it should work. And the way you would know, so we're going to use Excel as an example, but the way you would know, this little box will pop up here and it says click once to follow. Now, let's say, for example, if we're going to do youtube.com, see how it doesn't turn blue? That's because it's not a hyperlink. So you see the difference between this one and this one? Does that clarify it? Yeah. You sure?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So let's close YouTube. So back to this slide. So does anyone have questions about broken links before we move on? No? Okay. So the first step is monitoring broken links. So for many websites out there, and if you have any clients that have websites, they could be very old, 10, 15 years old. So over the years, as they added new pages to their website, as there have been different updates to their website, it might become difficult to always track broken links. So the easiest way to do this is to use a tool like SEMrush, which you all should have set up an account last week, or Screaming Frog, which we downloaded in week 1 to find those broken links. So really the key takeaway here is that you want to be proactive and check your broken links regularly. So I would say, I do this every day. So this is something I check once a week. But if you're, not doing this every day, but you still have a website, you might want to do it at least once a month. So how to fix broken links. So actually, before we do that, I'm going to show you all how to find broken links. So this is Screaming Frog. And you'll see here in the middle, I put in the Interrupt Media website. So the way you can figure out what links on the website are broken, you're going to go over here to, and can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay. So you're going to go over here to response codes. So response codes are basically codes that tell you what was the result when the website tried to go to a particular link or a particular page on a website. So success, that's anything with 200. So you'll see here that here in this table, anything with status code 200, that means the web page is working correctly. But for our purposes, we want to focus in on 400 errors and 500 errors. So 400 errors are more common, and these are the 404s that you guys sometimes see when you're on a website. So a client error, so there are actually 2 URLs on the website. They're status code 404, so that means that they're broken links. So if we try to go to one of these URLs, let's see what happens. So you see it's a 404 error, and that's expected. So it says that the page can't be found. So that's really important to know, because if there's anything on the Interrupt Media website that is linking to this particular URL, then you need to make sure that you set up a redirect, which we'll go over in a bit here. But that's how you find broken links. That's probably the easiest way. You can also use SEMrush like I mentioned, but I find that Screaming Frog is a lot faster. So just go ahead.
Does this mean that we have a page on our WordPress account that links to this website?
Yes, so let's see if we can find one. So this is a page that is actually indexed by Google, and it's a broken link. So it does need to be fixed. So, wish I could see here.
Does that mean that we have this page created on our WordPress account that is not working?
Correct. So yeah, I would say probably the best way to go. So it looks like if you look at the URL here, it's interruptmedia.com/about and then /contact. So I think that the best way to fix it would be to either redirect it to the about page, so /about, or redirect it to the contact page. So that's something you might want to chat with Ben about, but you just want to make sure that that's fixed with a redirect.
It could also be a draft that was published, right?
Right, it could be. Yeah, sometimes, especially in WordPress, you might have a draft that somehow ends up being published. So yeah, you just have to make sure, just to stay proactive about those types of issues, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions on that? Yeah, so the important thing to remember here, so Screaming Frog, you want to go to the response code section and then look at your 4XX errors and your 5XX errors. And usually you're going to see more 4XX errors. Okay? So now that we've found that particular broken link, how do you fix it? So the best way would probably be to set up a 301 redirect for broken internal links. So internal links are any links that on your website that link to another page on your website. So let's say, for example, you have a K-pop website and you have a page about BTS, and then you have a page about EXO. Are those groups?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'm not that old. So let's say you had.
Excuse me.
Sure.
Can I go to the bathroom?
Oh, sure. Go for it.
Thank you.
So yeah, we'll wait until Jared comes back. But yeah, so EXO and BTS, are those popular groups?
Yeah. How do you know?
Wait, what? I didn't hear that last part. What?
How did you know them?
Oh, I was actually in Asia for a few months earlier this year. So
Where exactly?
I was in Thailand, Vietnam, Singapore, Malaysia, and Bali, Indonesia. Yeah.
Why did you not stop by the Philippines?
I wanted to, because I was actually in Indonesia when that big earthquake happened. So yeah, so I had scheduled to travel there, but unfortunately my flight schedule had to change. So I didn't, yeah.
Last question. Where in the Philippines are you planning to go when you plan to go here?
I was thinking about, I hear a lot of good things about Angeles City. Is that the name?
Angeles.
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 Angeles, yeah. Angeles, yeah.
Why Angeles? We should go to Palawan.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. I'm going to check it out. Probably next year. Probably next year. But yeah, when I was in Hong Kong, Korean pop was very popular there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I heard a lot of it there.
Leonard, can we move on instead of waiting for Jerry? He
Okay.
can
Yeah, he
chat.
can watch the recording. Yeah. Okay. Sure. So how to fix broken links. So setting up 301 redirects for broken internal links. So basically, back to my example with Dia's K-pop website. So let's say you have a page for BTS and then you have a page for EXO. An internal link is, let's say you link from your BTS page to your EXO page. So you see this commonly on Wikipedia. So Wikipedia will have one article, then it'll link to another article on Wikipedia. So that would be an internal link. So basically, you will want to set up a 301 redirect. So just a quick demo on that. So let's see here. So this is actually my website, one of my websites. And you can see here, I use a plugin called Redirection. And this is going to be one of your homework assignments to install this on your own WordPress website. And let's look at the first one here. So basically the way this works is that you want to, so the first link here, actually let's use another example. Let's use this one. So this first link here, this is actually the OURL. So whatever the first URL is that you originally created for that page, that's going to be your source URL. Your target URL is the new URL. So let's say, for example, going back to your K-pop website, you had a page 2018 groups, K-pop groups to pay attention to. So these are new K-pop groups that aren't really popular yet, but they're on the verge of being very popular and famous. And then for 2019, you created a new page on the same topic, but of course it would have new groups on that page. So instead of having a 2018 and 2019 page, what you might want to do is redirect your 2018 page to your 2019 page. So basically, you always want to provide the most updated information. So basically what I did here, going back to our example that we're looking at, I had this old page. So it's like forward slash our services, Houston SEO company, local SEO can help business. And then I wanted to redirect it to this page here. And so you'll just click save. And then what that will look like here on the front end of the website. So we just take away everything here after destinymarketingsolutions.com, added this. So that's our OURL. So I just want to make sure everyone sees that. So that's our OURL. So wait for that to load. So you can see here automatically it redirected to our new URL. So that's our new URL here. And that's basically all a redirect is. It's basically redirecting users from an old URL to a new URL. And the way, so going back to how you would fix a broken link with this, so going back to the interrupt media example, so this particular URL, you see it, we saw it's a broken page. You would basically use this as your source URL, and then for your target URL, you would use your about page or your contact page. Does that follow?
Yeah.
Okay. That's how you would fix a broken link that links to another page on your website. Now, the other situation is when you have a broken link that goes out to an external website. So let's say going back to your K-pop page or K-pop website, Dia, let's say on your EXO page, you have a link out to the Wikipedia page, Wikipedia article for EXO, for example. So let's say for whatever reason that page goes down on Wikipedia, or they update it, or they change the name of the group. anything can happen. So if you try to link out to that old Wikipedia page, it's going to give you a broken link. So a 404 error. So in those cases, you can't set up a 301 redirect because it's not on your website. So instead, you have two options. You can find the page on the linked website that is more appropriate, that can serve as a substitute. So let's say that old XO page is no longer active, but you're able to find the new XO page on Wikipedia. So that would be a good way to go about it. Just replace that old URL with the new URL. Or you can, probably the faster way, you can remove the link altogether. So is everyone clear on how to do that? Okay. And Jarek, they told me to go on without you, man. So you'll just have to watch the recording. Um, so that's how you fix broken links. So going on to our second topic for improving your website's crawlability and improving your website's ability to be indexed. So sitemaps. So this question is for Joy. So Joy, what do you think a sitemap is for?
It's a list of pages in a website.
Good job. Very good. Very good. Yeah. So it's a list of pages on a website. It's a list of pages on a website. Basically, all of the pages that you want people to find on your site and that you want to show up in Google or Bing or Yahoo. So that's, in a nutshell, what a sitemap is. And it serves as a map, as its name says, serves as a map for Google and other search engine crawlers. So it pretty much tells them, okay, these are all the pages on my website, crawl these pages. And it helps crawlers find your website pages and rank them accordingly. So your sitemap, any sitemap online, is formatted in a special meta language or language called XML. And XML stands for Extensible Markup Language. And so just to give you guys an idea on what a sitemap looks like. So actually, let's talk about that a little bit later. So sitemap best practices. So here on the right-hand side is a screenshot of an example of a XML file. So this is pretty much, when Google is reading your website, this is what it looks like to Google. So some best practices, you want to make sure that your sitemap is formatted properly in an XML document. So if you don't know XML, you just need to make sure that you pass this on to a developer so that they can properly format it in the correct format. You want to ensure that it follows XML sitemap protocol. So you want to make sure that the specific syntax, the specific formatting that you see here on the right, that's followed in your XML document. Number 3, the third bullet point here, you want to confirm that all pages you want to be found on Google are indexed in a sitemap. So what does that mean? So going back to that interrupt media example where you had the case where you might have a draft page that you might not necessarily want it to be public to people on Google. So instead of creating that as a draft and adding that to your sitemap, you want to exclude that from your sitemap so that Google doesn't index that particular page. Yeah, go ahead.
What happens when you remove that page?
So if you're
Will it automatically be removed from the sitemap?
So when you remove that page, it might be a bit of a lag time before Google removes it from the index. But yeah, it'll basically be removed from the Google search results. So if someone was searching for interrupt media, they wouldn't be able to find that page. It'll kind of be like an internal page for just the team. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. So you want to, so the fourth bullet point here, you want to make sure you submit the sitemap to your Google Search Console. So, Jonah, how does all of this sound? You think you could handle like the first 3 bullet points here?
Is it Jonah or Jana?
Oh, sorry, Jonah.
Jonah. Walo ka na no? No.
No.
No, right? This is like very technical and kind of intense. You know, you probably need some experience with XML development before you could properly handle this. So,
I get too excited. Can I ask a question again?
yeah, sure, go ahead.
Actually, my question is, I mean, when you remove a page from your website, will it automatically be removed on the XML file, or do you have to manually remove it?
So that's a great question. So you'll actually have to refresh your sitemap. And we're actually going to go into that idea in probably the next 2 slides, exactly what you have to do there. Yep. But yeah, so let me finish picking on Jonah. So Jonah, right? So these 3 bullet points, like doing an XML sitemap, making sure it's the right protocol, this is difficult stuff, right? So lucky for us, we have a plugin called Yoast SEO, which you all should have downloaded, installed on your website last week. And it'll actually take care of all of this for us. So going back to the sitemap here. So once you install Yoast SEO, you'll see this little Y symbol, and it'll have SEO right next to it. And then it actually has a section called XML sitemaps. So I've already clicked on that section. But yeah, let's just click on it again so you see what comes up. So you see here, I just always leave this the default 1000. But you see here, Yoast, it automatically creates a sitemap for you. And you can actually view your sitemap. So clicking that button, you can see the sitemap. So this is the sitemap for my website. So you can see it's already formatted correctly. And if you actually want to see the XML, you can like even drill down even further. So you can see the different sitemaps on my website. So that saves us a lot of time and a lot of headache because we don't have to do it ourselves and we don't have to get the help from a developer to create the sitemap. So now to answer Dia's question, now that we have this sitemap, so how do we get Google to pick up on it? So, and this is where Google Search Console comes into play. So in Google Search Console, there's a module, and this is something else that you all should have added for your websites earlier in the session. But you'll see there's a module called Crawl, and then under Crawl, there's a section called Sitemaps. So once you're in that section, you're going to hit this red button here on the right-hand side called Add Test and Sitemap. And so from here, you need to put in the sitemap URL. So it already helped me out. It started with my domain name, destinymarketingsolutions.com. But then we're going to go over here to, let's go back. You want to make sure you get the main sitemap here. So you want to grab this the second part of the URL, and this is called the slug. So you want to copy and paste that part over here into the Search Console. And so first, whenever before I submit, I always hit test just to make sure that the sitemap is working correctly. So you hit the test button here. And then test complete, view test result. So thing I'm looking for here is no errors found. So everything looks good for our sitemap. So now you can go ahead and submit it to Google. So hit the blue button there, and then refresh the page. And so now we'll actually see something here on the page. You'll see some information about the sitemap. So you can see here, sitemap underscore index.xml. That's the same thing we're looking at over here. Sitemap underscore index.xml. And then here, today's date, that's the date it was processed. Now, today's question. So let's say we need to update this sitemap. So first, we would remove that page from, we'll set up a redirect for that particular page or where we're getting a broken link. And then assuming that we've already added the sitemap to Google Search Console, we'll check the box and then we'll hit the resubmit button. And so I'm not going to hit resubmit here because there have been no changes, but Thea, that's how you would get Google to pick up on the change in your sitemap. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, great. So let's see. So we've already talked about using Yoast to create your sitemap and how to submit that sitemap to Google Search Console. Now, before we move on to the next topic, did anyone have any other questions about sitemaps? Nope. Okay, great. So moving on to robots.txt files. So a robots.txt file, and this is where we're starting to get a little more technical with SEO. It's simply a text file that a website owner, so you all, would create to instruct search engine robots how to crawl your index pages on your website. So you can think of, so the difference between a sitemap and a robots.txt file. So a sitemap is really, like Joyce said, is like a list of all of the pages on your website that you want to be publicly available to Google and other search engines. A robots.txt file is a little more detailed. It actually gives instructions to Google search engine crawler, to Bing search engine crawler on how to crawl your website. So, and this is simply a text file. Here are a few examples. So you can see here, it's a simple text file here. So we see here, so the way to read this in the first example, so we don't want to, so you'll see WP-admin, WP-content, and the README. We really don't want people to find these pages on our website. They're really not important for someone who's not on the team to see. So in this case, we would use a command called disallow, and it'll actually block these pages from being indexed in Google. And so blocking it from being indexed, again, meaning people would not be able to find these pages if they were to search for interruptmedia.com. So that's important there. So one thing you always want to keep an eye out for when looking at your robots.txt file is this right here. So we have disallow, colon, and then a /. And so a / basically is like a shorthand symbol for your homepage. And so what that tells Google, if this was included in your robots.txt file, is that, hey, Google, I don't want any page on my website to show up in Google on your search results. And obviously, if we go back to our, the rule number one of good SEO, of having a website, is being able to be found by people on the search engine. If we tell Google that, hey, I don't want any pages on my site to be shown, well, that breaks that rule, right? Because it basically blocks all of our pages from being shown on Google. And so that's something, if you're looking at your robots.txt file, something really important to pay attention to. You never want to see this particular line here. So those are some examples. So identifying issues with your robots.txt file. So the first thing you can do is use a special Google search query. It's going to be site:/yourwebsite.com. So I have an example here. I did this Google search for the Interrupt Media website. And we see here, so you see here at the top, I use site:/interruptmedia.com. And as expected, the Interrupt Media website showed up. So that tells me that there are any issues with the robots.txt file. This is exactly what I want. But let's say, for example, you did this search query and another website came up instead of interruptmedia.com. Well, that's a red flag that there's might be something wrong with your robots.txt file. And you might want to check it to make sure that there aren't any issues with it. But in this case, luckily, fortunately, there aren't any issues. So going back to our presentation here, yeah, so again, if your site is not number one, then you want to make sure that your robots.txt file looks correct. So where do you find your robots.txt file? So it's going to be shown at the website at the root of your website host. So this is something that I'm not going to get into. Really, it's something that your developer would handle. But if your website doesn't have a robots.txt file, so let's say all of the websites that you all are working on, they're brand new. They're not going to have this automatically. We again can use the Yoast plugin to help us out here. So how do you use the Yoast plugin to do this? So if we go back to WordPress, so again, I'm in the backend of my website. And again, we're in Yoast. So when you're in Yoast, you're going to go to the Tools section here. In the Tools section, you'll see here the robots.txt section. So if you've never created a robots.txt file for your website, it's going to look a little bit different. It's going to have a message that says you don't have a robots.txt file, and it's going to have a button that allows you to create one. So just hit that button. It'll take 5 seconds. And then once you hit that button, it's going to show this here. And so just, it's a good practice to save changes to your robots.txt file. So you'll just hit that button. And then again, this, what makes Yoast so convenient is that you don't have to reach out to your developer to create this for you. You can do it in a matter of a few seconds. And so once you create that robots.txt file, then you want to make sure that Google picks up on it. So going to our next step here, how to test your robots.txt file. So similar to your sitemap, you can also test your robots.txt file using Google Search Console. So for that, we're going to go back over to Google Search Console. And so again, you're going to go to the crawl section here. And you're going to go to the robots.txt tester section. And when you're there, why don't we go ahead and just go to this first page so you can see. So when you're there, you should see the same thing that you saw over here in Yoast. So it should be the same exact 3 lines. And we see here that they match. And more importantly, we see that there aren't any errors and there aren't any warnings. So that's a good sign for us. And so if you ever want to just check a specific URL on your website, so let's say, for example, let's use Joy's singing website, for example. Let's say, Joy, that you had a page on singing lessons. You offer singing lessons to students. So it'll be something like singing-lessons. If you wanted to check to make sure that there aren't any issues with that particular page, you would put that in here in your URL, and then you would just hit the test button. And then Google will let you know, Google Search Console will let you know whether there are any issues with that particular page. I know that's, a little more technical, but were there any questions there? No? Okay. And again, if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out about robots.txt files. Or if you do have a developer on your team, they would also be a good resource to reach out to. Okay. So now that's the first part of our session. The second part is optimizing your site performance. And these are different areas where I think that it's best that you either consult a developer, professional web developer, or you consult, maybe your hosting company, Bluehost, for example, because you want to make sure you get these things right. Because if you don't, then it can cause havoc with your website. So the first thing, and I just want to make sure we don't have any developers on the team, right? Okay. I saw Jarek look back, so I thought maybe we had like a secret developer that would know this stuff. Okay, so let's maximize again. So website security protocol. So this is a question for anyone who can answer. So what are some reasons why you would want to keep your website secure?
If you have private information inside your website, hackers will be able to get that information from your site if it is not secured.
Perfect, Dia. That's right on target. So yeah, you want to make sure your website is secure so that it's very difficult for hackers or anyone who, any cyber criminals out there to hack into your website. And not only can they steal information from your users, but they can also hijack your website and do all types of weird stuff to where they can lock you out your own website. They can change the way your website looks. They can pretty much they can do whatever they want once they hijack your website. And as I mentioned in week one, this is definitely never a situation you want to be in with your website or with a client's website, because it's very difficult to come back from it, to recover from it. So exactly right there. You want to make sure that your website is secure for those reasons. Now, so what exactly does it mean when a website is secure? So you can see here in this graphic, we have a HTTP. And so for the longest of time, with the internet, this was enough. So HTTP protocol basically is pretty much a format on the protocol for your website and how it relays messages and links back and forth between users. So HTTP is kind of the starting point. Now, in order to make your website secure, you have to add an extra layer of security. And that's called SSL, and that stands for Secure Socket Layer. And what this extra layer does, it encrypts information sent across the internet. So in other words, it packs it makes it more difficult for hijackers or cyber criminals, to get into your information and decode it. So I guess an offline example would be, if you had a riddle or something that you had to decode, SSL would make it a lot more difficult for you to decode that riddle. And so when you combine the HTTP protocol and the SSL certificate, you get the HTTPS protocol. And so pretty much any website that is secure, it's going to have that protocol on the website URL. So just to see a real life example, so you can see here, this is again the page we were looking at before. So Interrupt Media was actually you guys are doing a good job there. You're using a SSL certificate to protect your website. Now, let's try to find a website that's not secure. So I'm just doing this as an example. So this is a special Google search you can do. So basically what this search is saying, return URLs that don't have HTTPS protocol. That's what this little minus sign in front means. So let's just say, let's use photography. And so sometimes it's not going to be 100% correct. It's still going to return see websites. Yeah, there are none here. So why don't we try another example? Let's try this. Okay. Let's make it even more specific. Houston than us. Okay, so finally we found one. So it looks like this website might not be using SSL. Let's see. So they are. So false. Good job, Google. So let's try to find another one. Let's see. For some reason it's not showing up. So not URL. Yes. So let's do cosmetic dentist. Katie. Okay, let's take a look at this one. Okay, so we finally found one. So as you saw before, the Interrupt Media website is secure. It has this little lock symbol here, and it has the HTTPS. So when your website is not secure, it's going to have a message that says that, and you see it doesn't have that little I symbol. So the reasons Dia mentioned, you want to make sure you protect your website information from hackers. Another reason, if someone is, a potential client or a potential customer, and they come to your website, and the first thing they see is not secure, that's going to cause pause, right? So Jana, if you came to a website and it says not secure, and it was asking you for your email information, it was maybe asking for your payment information, would you want to use that website?
No.
No, of course not, right? So that's why it's important to secure your website, because it also, if you have a website that's not secure, it takes away from the trust of your website and the trust from your company. So that's why it's really important to secure your website with SSL. Now, what are some other reasons why you want to secure your website? Well, the first thing, starting really in 2017, but it's even more important now, it's very important that you secure your website, because HTTPS security is a strong ranking factor, and it can impact your website's rankings if you're not securing your website with an SSL certificate. So the way that you would fix this, I believe you all are using Bluehost. Is that correct, Dia?
No. We are using GoDaddy.
Oh, GoDaddy. Okay. Yeah, same for GoDaddy. So you want to work with GoDaddy, and it could be either GoDaddy, your hosting company, or if your domain provider is a different company, you can work with either. But the key takeaway there is you want to work with them to get SSL certificate installed on your website. So you would just call them up, or a lot of the companies, they have live chat. You can just tell them, hey, I want to add an SSL certificate to my website. And they can usually take care of it for you within an hour. So very easy, but very important that you recognize the need for this for your website. Now, that's simple enough, right? But there's an issue of mixed content. So mixed content in a nutshell is when you have an HTTPS page. So going back to our Interrupt Media example, so you guys are using the SSL certificate. Let's say that you added an image, or you added a link to a video that isn't secure. So basically, you have a secure website, but it links out to another website that isn't secure. So that's an issue, right? Because it's still a vulnerability for your website. It still makes your website vulnerable to hackers, even though you are using HTTPS on your website. So and it can cause issues with your site's visuals and functionality. So let's say, for example, you're linking out to a video, but your website is built in a way where it's HTTPS, it's using HTTPS. It can make the visuals on your website look weird or cause different things on your website not to work properly. So very important that if you have an HTTPS website, that you're linking only to things that are HTTPS encrypted. It can also negatively affect your SEO. So like I mentioned on the previous slide, if you do have are using, if you're not using an SSL certificate, it can be a bad ranking signal for your website. So let's look at a real world example. So let's say, let's look at Jonah again. So Jonah, who are some of your favorite movie actors or actresses?
For
I can't hear what?
Noah. Noah Centineo.
Centennial?
Yes.
Okay, how do you spell that?
Centineo.
Centennial. Centennial.
It's Charlie, Echo, Nancy, Tango, India, Nancy, Echo, Oscar.
Can you type it in the little chat here? I just want to make sure I pronounce it correctly.
Wait.
Yeah, so if you go to here. Okay, Centennial. Got it. Okay. So Jonah, let's say you had a website that was dedicated to Centennial. You're a fan, you're a fanatic, you love everything that they have done in their career. And let's say you had a video on there that it was a good video, but it was from a website that's not secure. So that causes an issue, right? Because we're going to assume that you took Leonard's course and you secured your website and everything is secure there, but you're linking out to a video that's not secure. That's going to show up as a red flag when Google and other search engines review your website. So it's definitely something that you want to stay on top of. So how can you fix your Centennial website? Well, the frog to the rescue again. So if you haven't noticed, I'm a big fan of Screaming Frog because it can identify a lot of issues with your website. So again, we're going to stay with our interrupt media example, and it's pretty simple way to find mixed content on your website. So you would go to reports, and then you would go to insecure content. So just hit that. And then it's going to create an Excel file of all of the insecure content on your website. So as you can see, I already ran this report for Interrupt Media. And good thing there isn't any insecure content on the site. But still, this is something that you want to double check and just make sure that there's nothing there. Now, let's just pretend that there was insecure content on your website. So how do you fix it? So you have a couple of options here. You can either use a script. So search replace DB is a popular script. And basically what it does, it takes all of the URLs that don't have HTTPS and then replaces them with HTTPS. So you can use a script. The other option, you can use a plugin. So these are several popular plugins that you can use to resolve mixed content issues. But again, this is something that I recommend that you work with a developer on, because anytime where you're changing URLs on a massive scale, you're making changes to your website's database. And the smallest thing can go wrong with your website database, and it can break your website or cause it to not work as it should. So very important that you do work with a developer or someone who has experience with this when fixing mixed content issues.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
When you say it redirects to a unsecured site, are we talking about internal pages within our websites, or does it
Yeah,
also apply to third-party sites? Like when you hyperlink something and it hyperlink a phrase in your website that redirects to a third-party site,
yeah,
to a
great question.
third-party unsecured website.
Yeah, great question, Dia. So it can actually be both. So let's go to the Internet Media website, for example. So where was it? So it can actually be both. So there are probably different elements on your website where you're using JavaScript code or some type of script. So let's just say, let's see, what could be a script here? So this little map section here, and this is at the bottom of your guys' homepage, there's probably a script being used from Google to make this map display. So let's say, for example, that that script wasn't secure. So it wasn't using the HTTPS protocol. So that's a situation where it would be an internal issue on your site. Yeah. Now let's say, if we scroll up a little further here, we have links to LinkedIn and we have links to Twitter. So those, let's just say, this isn't true, but let's say those weren't using HTTPS protocol, but they actually link out to an external website. So in those cases, Thea and everyone, those would be external issues that you have to clean up. So the best way to clean those up again would be to use those tools I just went over. But to answer your question in short, Thea, it can be internal or external. So when you run, so let's say there were actually insecure issues on your website. When you run that report in Screaming Frog, it'll actually tell you if it's internal or external. Does that answer your question, Dia?
Yeah.
Okay. So any other questions on mixed content? Okay. So this is going to be a pop quiz question for Jarek. So Jarek, what is mixed content and why should it be fixed?
What is mixed content and why should it be fixed? What is mixed content?
Can anyone help them out there?
Can I answer that for you? Yes, can I answer that for him?
Yeah, sure.
A mixed content happens when an HTML page is loaded over to an unsecured website, and we can fix that by working on the script and the plugins.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, that's perfect answer. Dia's on fire today. She's going to be teaching these SEO courses in a few weeks. I'm ready for it. But yeah, that's absolutely right. So so that's the first thing, fixing issues with mixed content and making sure your website is secure. So site mobility, and this is commonly called mobile friendliness. So this question is for anyone who can answer. So what is mobile friendliness for a website? What do you guys think that means?
Website can be viewed on our cell phone.
Yep. Yeah. So cell phone is one example. So does it look good on a mobile phone? But that also applies to tablets, so like iPads, and even it can also apply to smaller laptops too. So you have like maybe like I think maybe an 11-inch laptop. Your website might look a little bit different than if it was a 18-inch or 19-inch laptop or your desktop. So yeah, but that's right, yeah. So kind of more of a general answer. how does your website look on different devices, regardless of size? So here are a few examples. So you see here on the left-hand side, we have the same website, but you can see here on the left-hand side, this is how it would look on an iPhone, the desktop version of your website. And you can see the text is really small. For the average person, it'll be very difficult to scroll this website because your fingers would be too big, right? So in the right-hand version, we fix some of these things. We make the buttons bigger to use, so they're easier to use. The text is easier to read because it's bigger. And then even the logo is bigger. So it definitely provides a better user experience than the version on the left-hand side. Here's another example, and this is a preschool program for toddlers and small children. So on the left-hand side here, kind of this what we saw with the first example, the text is really small, the buttons are really small. You can't even read what's here at the bottom, and then it's very hard. You kind of have to squint to see the logo and the name of the company. So that gets a sad face. So on the right-hand side here, it's actually a lot more mobile friendly. So the image is larger, the logo is larger, so you can see clearly the name of the business, and then even the text here is larger, so you can scroll through it and see it more clearly. So the mobile first index is, in a nutshell, a effort by Google to index the mobile version of your website first, and to use that version to determine where your website gets indexed or ranked. So let's say, for example, let's go back to this example. So let's say, one of the keywords that this particular company wanted to target was Los Angeles preschool. So Los Angeles, big city here in the US. So Los Angeles preschool. Since this version of the website isn't very mobile friendly, and let's say we didn't have a mobile friendly version, then this is what would be indexed by Google. And unfortunately, people are going to go to this website, and more than likely, they're going to bounce off of it. They're going to leave it quickly because it's just difficult to use. And so Google collects these types of data, your bounce rate, the amount of time someone spends on your website, the number of pages that they visit on your website on average. And if those metrics aren't good, then it's going to negatively impact your rankings. Whereas if you have a mobile-friendly website, people are more likely to stay on your website longer. They're going to navigate through more pages, and just overall, you provide a better user experience, which Google likes, and it's going to probably reward your website with a higher ranking. So some best practices for mobile friendliness. So as we saw in the mobile friendly examples, make sure that your font size is big enough so that it's clearly readable on any device. And so we're going to go over in a bit a way to see that. You want to make sure that you embed your YouTube videos. So make sure that they're embedded and that they resize automatically based on the type of device that a person is using to view your website. And then you want to compress your images. So Joy, remind me, what does it mean when I say compress images? Or better question, what is a way I can compress images on a website? And just a hint, this was one of our homework assignments last week. Yep. Does anyone remember the name of that plugin? What's it called? It starts with an S.
Smosh?
Yep, Smush. Good. So the name of that plugin is Smush. But yeah, you just want to make sure you have a way to compress your images. Either you do it manually, which I don't recommend because that takes a lot of time, or you use a plugin like Smush to automatically compress your images once you add them to your website. Now, this is pretty common for websites now. to use mobile responsive. But several years ago, it wasn't common. So basically, you could have a desktop version of your website and then a mobile version of your website. So basically, two versions of your website. That causes many maintenance issues and headaches. And so now most people, they just use a mobile responsive website where you create one version of your website, and depending on the device you're using, whether you're using an iPad or whether you're using an iPhone, it's going to automatically adjust the aesthetic and look and feel of your website for that device. Now, how do you check your website's mobile friendliness? Well, there are two popular tools that I use. So let's go and see these tools in action. So the first is Google's mobile friendly test. So exactly as it sounds, basically you plug in your website to this URL. So you would just do a Google search for Google mobile friendly testing tool. And let's say we want to do it for interruptmedia.com. You hit run test. And then it's going to do its magic. So I think it's taking longer because I'm sharing my screen, but it's usually a lot faster. Analyzing. How many Googles does it take to look at a website? And then, so now you see here, so good news is that the website is mobile friendly. So, and then you'll kind of see here, you can scroll down, you can hit view details, and you can see a few page loading issues. So these are things, again, that I would share with your website developer because they would better know how to fix it. But, actually the map that we were looking at before, it seems like that could probably be optimized so that it could load faster. And then for JavaScript, yeah, so no issues there. So, and then, but this is really the starting point to see if your website is mobile friendly. So obviously, if your website isn't mobile friendly, it's going to pretty much say that here. But even if your website comes back mobile friendly, that doesn't really tell you how it looks on different devices, right? So for that, I use another tool called mobi.ready or mobi-ready. And the URL is ready.mobi. And basically, as you can see here, I've already put in the website, but you can see how it looks on a desktop. You can see how it looks on a smartphone, other different types of mobile phones. And it pretty much gives you a score based on how mobile ready your website is. So the Interrupt Media website actually got a score of 2.24 out of 5. So it's mobile friendly, but it looks like there are some areas for improvement. So this is something I would just send this over to my developer and say, hey, let's look at some of these issues for your website. And usually a big reason why your website would be, areas where you can improve your website would be your CSS, your JavaScript, and your pop-ups if you're using any. So those are usually, once we have a mobile-friendly website, we're looking at ways to make it even more mobile-friendly. I will look at these areas here in this report. So does anyone have any questions there? Yep. Okay. So that's mobile friendliness. Now for the last topic today, we're going to talk about page speed performance. So this is simply how fast your website loads. So a good starting point, so when you first launch your website, good starting point is 5 seconds or less. So in 5 seconds, you want all of the important elements on your website to load. Now, ideally, once your website gets older and you're adding more content to it, you want to continue to optimize this. And your sweet spot for your load time is between 2 and 3 seconds. And, obviously the faster the better, but, after 2 seconds, getting it under 2 seconds would have diminishing returns. So you just want to make sure that you're first under 5 seconds or less, and then within 2 to 3 seconds. So how do you test this? So the first tool I will look at is called Google PageSpeed Insights. And so this is another free tool from Google. So just do a Google search for PageSpeed Insights, and then you can just plug in your website URL here. And this will tell you on a scale of 0 to 100 on how good your website speed is. And the good thing about this tool, it gives you a score for mobile. So remember when we were talking about the importance of having a mobile-friendly website, so page speed is a factor in that. And you also want to look at your desktop mobile speed. And so this will kind of give you some ideas on how you can optimize it. So, it looks like for the desktop version of your website, you can optimize some of the images. So I think this is probably the image you're using for your banner here. Where's the website? I lost it, but it's going to be the wave banner. You could, do some optimization for your JavaScript and CSS. So this actually tells you the scripts that could be optimized. And then you can leverage browser caching. And so these are all things that are really technical. So the key takeaway that I want everyone to be able to identify these issues and be able to communicate those with whoever manages the development of your website. So that's how you identify different issues. Now, when I'm doing page speed tests, I like to get second and third opinions. So there are also 2 other tools that I use regularly. The first is GTmetrix. So GTmetrix is a free tool. As you can see here, I plugged in the website URL, and it has a really good page speed score. It has a good Y-slow score. But for some reason, for GTmetrix, it has a fully loaded time of 9 seconds, which is way over that 5-second benchmark that we were going for, right? So, since I've used the website, I'm hesitant to believe that number, which is why it's important to use a different tool to get a second opinion. But even then, you can see some of the same issues that we saw from Google PageSpeed Insights, like leverage browser caching, which is a high priority issue. These are things that we might want to fix in order to improve the website speed. So one cool thing with GTmetrix, you can actually get a visual representation of how your website loads. So as soon as someone lands on your website, these are the different resources that are loading on your site. So again, these aren't something I would dive into too deep at this point in your SEO training, but at least be able to identify these things. And really what you want to see here are bars that seem to be a lot longer than everything else in the list here. You want to pass on to your developer to see if there are ways you can optimize them so that they load faster. But pretty much that's what a waterfall is. It just kind of tells you for point 0 to the last point, what all is loading and how long is it taking for it to load. So that's GTmetrix in a nutshell. The last tool that I use for website speed is called Pingdom. And again, I use your websites, the Intramedia website. And I tested from San Francisco, which happens to be the same city where the USA office is located. But you can see here, you can test from different cities. So what I like to do, if I have a website that's only targeting a specific country, then I try to use the country that is closest to my home country. So let's say, for example, if one of you had a website targeting just the Philippines, you might want to either look at Australia or Japan for your test. So for the test results, we see that they're a lot different compared to GT metrics. So we have a good performance grade of B, 86, but we see that our load time is a lot faster. So it's 1.45 seconds. So that's a good sign. So that 9 seconds is probably a false alarm. But from what I gathered here, we saw that this issue with browser caching, it's an issue on GT metrics. It was an issue here on page speed insights. Yep, leverage browser caching. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be an issue here. So we scroll down. It's not showing up here, but we can say that, confidently say that 2 out of the 3 tools that we use identified it as an issue. So if we were to improve the website speed for Interrupt Media, the Interrupt Media website, we would want to look at that browser caching. So that brings me to the end of today's session. Were there any questions on anything?
What if the internet connection is slow? Does that affect the page speed of your website?
That's a great question. And that's something that can definitely happen, right? Where you might be using a really fast internet connection at work, but maybe your internet connection at home is slow. So there's not too much you can do about that when there's a slow internet connection. If someone ever complains that your website is slow, that's why it's good to use these third-party tools like GT Metrics, Google PageSpeed Insights, and Pingdom. That way you can get an objective answer to that question. Is my website really slow, or is that person's internet connection just slow? Now, if you find that many of the users of your website are using slow internet connections, so one way you can help them out is you can use less elements on your website that require a lot of resources. So what that means, you can use less images, less video, less advanced scripts, so that there isn't as much to load when someone goes to your website. So if you ever seen like a really old website, usually it's just text and hyperlinks. And if someone is using a slow internet connection, those types of websites will load really fast. But if they were to use like images, video, it would take a lot longer. So the key takeaway there is try to use objective tools to find out the website speed performance. And if possible, try to make it easier for your website to load. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions for today? Okay. Oh, Jarek, you had another one?
Would you be able to upload a video tomorrow?
Yes. So definitely I'll get that up faster. So while it's recording, it'll take some time to convert it, but I'll get it uploaded to the Google Drive folder as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. And so just the homework for this week, it's really going to be a lot of reading and watching some supplementary videos. Unfortunately, our hour and a half isn't enough to really dive as deep as I would like into some of these topics. But I think by reviewing some of these articles, you would get a better understanding, deeper understanding of some of the topics that we covered today. On top of that, I want you to install a few plugins for your websites and then submit. So some of the demos that we went over today, submitting a sitemap, submitting a Robots.txt file. I want you to do that for your own website just to get practice with it and just to make sure you understand the material that we covered today. And then, of course, I want you to answer the homework question. So I know I made the questions last week more difficult just because I want you all to really understand some of those concepts. But these homework questions should not be as difficult. But definitely, if you need questions on, you have your questions on anything, feel free to reach out. But similar to last week, I'll just upload all of this, the homework, task, and questions into the Google Drive document. That way you can see it there too. Okay? So anything else before we break for today? No? Okay. Well, thanks everyone. Still excited to teach this course every week. And yeah, let's try to communicate on Slack a little bit more between sessions. I'm sure you guys, this is your first time seeing some of this material. So if you have questions, feel free to reach out there.
All right.
All right.
You.
All right. Y'all have a great evening. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, you gotta go.